The psychopath Deadpool, that's what got Wade Wilson sentenced to death. Hey everyone, my name is Knox. Today, I'm going to tell you the whole shocking truth about the brutal killer Wade Wilson. As I was preparing the material, I was shocked by the cynicism with which this seemingly nice young man killed two innocent women. But the most incredible thing is that fierce fans came to his defense, sending him almost 4,000 messages and over 150 explicit photos. What's behind such popularity? But let's take it one step at a time. Let's go. The story of the repeat offender quickly spread across the internet, but the attention it received was not just because of the crime itself, but because of one astonishing detail. The criminal's name is identical to the name of the famous Marvel Universe character, Wade Wilson. Also, his nickname, although slightly modified, is reminiscent of another famous name, Deadpool the Killer. This unexpected similarity sparked widespread public interest. Unlike his comic book counterpart, who is also known for his ruthlessness and lack of moral boundaries, the real Wilson was sentenced to death in 2024 for first-degree murder and a number of other serious crimes. His criminal history began long before that, involving numerous cases of break-ins, major thefts, and the use of firearms. But who is this real Wade Wilson? His criminal history began long before that, including numerous cases of break-ins, major thefts, and the use of firearms. But who is this real Wade Wilson? Wade Stephen Wilson was born on May 20th, 1994, to very young parents and was soon adopted by Steve and Candace Wilson. He spent his childhood in Tallahassee, Florida, where he attended Childs High School. From a young age, Wilson had a tough personality and often got into trouble related to petty vandalism and drugs. Several head injuries he suffered in childhood and adolescence, he claims, worsened his feelings of inner instability. Wilson's first run-in with the law happened in 2012 in Lyon County when he got involved in several incidents related to theft, violence, and illegal possession of firearms. In November 2013, he was arrested for burglary and grand theft, after which he spent time in jail until September 2014. In the following year, 2015, Wilson got caught again, this time facing charges of sexual harassment and kidnapping after a woman claimed he attacked her in her car after a party. However, the jury acquitted him on all counts of those charges. What made the jury acquit this jerk is beyond me. If you think that after such a lavish verdict, Wilson decided to straighten up, you're mistaken. In 2017, he found himself behind bars again, this time for stealing a firearm, and he stayed there until July 2018. Later that same year, his name came up in connection with the case of Dennis Williams, who was convicted of conspiracy to murder her husband. During the investigation, it emerged that Wilson may have attempted to tamper with evidence and even offered to get rid of Williams. The scumbag was already looking to get his kicks from murder back then, but fortunately, it didn't pan out that time. In February 2019, Wilson's ex-girlfriend filed a report of assault, claiming that he allegedly tried to strangle her. Although he was initially charged with kidnapping and rape, the case was closed due to lack of sufficient evidence and existing restraining orders. Then on July 1st, 2019, Wilson was arrested for assault. Although he was initially charged with kidnapping and rape, the case was closed due to lack of sufficient evidence and existing restraining orders. On July 1st, 2019, Wilson was arrested for assault. As you can see, up until a certain point, Deadpool, or Wade Wilson, if you will, was pretty lucky. He didn't stay in jail for long, and for some inexplicable reasons, he was acquitted of the worst crimes, yet he stubbornly kept digging his own grave. And I'll tell you, Wilson dug his own grave. One evening, specifically on October 7th, 2019, a double murder took place in Cape Coral, Florida, USA. The criminal turned out to be none other than Wade Wilson. He walked into a bar where he met Kristen Melton, who was 35 years old at the time. After a brief conversation, the girl, apparently looking to spend the evening not alone, invited her new acquaintance back to her place. She couldn't have imagined that instead of a pleasant evening, death awaited her. Wilson calmly strangled Kristen, left her body in the bed, and stole the car from the property. But the most shocking thing happened next. He enjoyed what happened so much that he decided to repeat the murder. Cruising around the city in a stolen car, he spotted Diana Ruiz, who was on her way to work. Wilson stopped the car next to her and, pretending to be a visitor, asked for directions. Out of the kindness of her heart, the woman got into his car, thinking she'd just show him the way. Inside the car, he attacked her, strangled her, tossed her out of the vehicle, and then ran over her body about 20 times until what was left of the girl looked like spaghetti. That's exactly what Wilson later claimed in court. Unable to keep this terrible secret to himself, the killer called his biological father and confessed to his crimes. However, his father didn't share his son's joy over what had happened. He lured him into a trap and then called the police. A week before the sentencing was supposed to be announced, Wade Wilson was questioned by a neurologist, Dr. Mark Rubina. In his opinion, the criminal suffered a head injury in 2 serious car accidents and also had a concussion while playing football and baseball. The examination results showed that the defendant's brain doesn't function like that of a healthy person. Additionally, an enlarged frontal lobe was found, which could have influenced Wilson's behavior, especially when combined with the drugs he took the night before committing the crimes. Wilson's ex-girlfriend confirmed that when he was sober, he was a completely different person, but one time he attacked her while under the influence of cocaine. Wilson's adoptive parents reached out to the court with a letter, explaining that their foster child had slipped away from them during his teenage years, suddenly falling into depression and paranoia and starting to use drugs. There it is, extra proof of what a head injury can lead to. However, I tend to think that Barney. At first, there were signs of antisocial behavior, and then the bruises and concussions acted as a catalyst that, as they say, unleashed the monster. However, that doesn't excuse his disgusting actions at all. During the trial, despite the information presented about Wilson's mental state, the prosecution experts stated that drugs played a significant role in his actions. The defense attorneys, for their part, pointed out that drug addiction could have impaired Wilson's ability to control his behavior at the time of the crime. Wilson's father, Stephen Testaseca, testified against his own son, telling the court about a phone confession from the defendant. According to the father, Wilson admitted that he hit Ruiz with his car, believing she was still alive, but couldn't explain why he did it, saying only, "I just felt like doing it." 8 out of 12 jurors recommended the death penalty for Wilson. According to his father, Wilson admitted that he hit Ruiz with his car, believing she was still alive, but couldn't explain why he did it, saying only, "I just felt like doing it." 8 out of 12 jurors recommended the death penalty for Wilson. As a result, 9 voted for the death penalty for the murder of Melton, while 10 voted for the murder of Ruiz. Judge Nicholas Thompson upheld both death sentences. After that, Wilson filed an appeal with the Florida Supreme Court. Wilson's conviction attracted public attention and controversy, with many requests for clemency. This case raised questions about the connection between mental health issues, criminal behavior, and the justice system. The extensive media coverage was triggered not only by the crime itself, but also by the fact that Wilson's name coincides with that of the popular Marvel comic character, Wade Wilson, known as Deadpool. Public opinion was divided. Some expressed sympathy for Wilson's mental health problems, while others condemned him for the brutal crimes he committed. What do you think? I've already shared my opinion. After the guilty verdict was announced in June 2024, it became clear that the convicted person was a very popular figure. While under investigation, he received about 4,000 messages and 754 photos from his fans. The most interesting thing is that 163 of them not only contained words of love and support, but also had quite indecent content and included intimate materials. The killer's admirers asked the court to commute the death sentence to life imprisonment for their idol, especially since by that time, there was information suggesting that Wilson's aggressive behavior could have been caused by long-term drug use and an undiagnosed mental illness. Honestly, I just don't get what goes on in people's heads. It's like there's such a lack of emotions that the love for a serial killer and a desire to walk on the edge just clouds their judgment. Wilson's fans weren't able to convince the judge to lighten the sentence and swap the death penalty for life in prison. It's like there's such a lack of emotions that the love for a serial killer and the desire to walk on the edge just clouds their judgment. Wilson's fans couldn't convince the judge to lighten the sentence and swap the death penalty for life in prison. When the judge announced his decision, applause erupted in the courtroom. Wade himself remained indifferent. Not a single muscle twitched on his face. In Florida, death row inmates spend about 14 years on death row. All this time, they are kept in solitary cells, receive 3 meals a day, and spend most of their day in isolation. They are not allowed to access the common areas of the prison. I wonder why there's such a delay in carrying out the sentence. What do you think? While in prison awaiting trial for the murders, Wilson did not engage in self-knowledge, read useful books, go to the gym, or do anything else that could in any way affect his personal growth and self-improvement. Instead, he amused himself as best he could, based on his mental capacity. For example, he tattooed several designs on his face, including a swastika under his right eye and another one on the side of his head. Since 2020, Wilson and his cellmate have been accused of organizing a jailbreak related to an attempt to break open the window of their cell. It's claimed that Wilson was the main instigator of the escape and a subsequent search for a getaway vehicle. In 2023, Wilson pleaded guilty to smuggling drugs into prison in exchange for dropping the charges related to the escape plot. He was sentenced to a fine and a 12-year prison term, which is to be served concurrently with the death penalty. Additionally, in 2023, Wilson nearly died from a drug overdose in prison. This case prompted the Lee County Sheriff's Department to launch an investigation. During the investigation, a scheme for the illegal delivery of drugs into the prison was uncovered. In the end, besides Wilson, charges were brought against 4 other people. In my opinion, Wilson has a desperate craving for everything illegal. And the scarier it is, the cooler it is for him. And who else has stood out like he has? Let's take a look. 16. In June 1944, in the US, 14-year-old George Stinney was executed, becoming the youngest person to be put to death in America in the 20th century. A black teenager has been convicted of killing 2 underage white girls in South Carolina. 70 years later, in 2014, the conviction was overturned and George Stinney was posthumously acquitted as a victim of a miscarriage of justice. On January 24, 1989, the infamous serial killer Ted Bundy was executed, earning the nickname the Nylon Killer for using nylon stockings to strangle his victims. The number of his victims ranges from 30 to 100 young women he killed in the 1970s. On May 10, 1994, another infamous serial killer, John Wayne Gacy, was executed in the state of Illinois. From 1972 to 1978, he committed the rape and murder of 33 people. In March 1980, Gacy was sentenced to 21 life terms and 12 death sentences. 11. And the murder of 33 people. In March 1980, Gacy was sentenced to 21 life sentences and 12 death sentences. On June 2001, far-right extremist Timothy McVeigh was executed in Terre Haute, Indiana. He had previously been found guilty of the bombing on April 19, 1995, at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, which resulted in the deaths of 168 people and over 680 injuries. This act of terrorism was considered the largest attack on U.S. soil until the events of September 11, 2001. On November 15, 2002, Pakistani-born Islamic terrorist Amal Qazi was executed in Virginia. In 1993, he opened fire on CIA employees, killing 2 and injuring 3 of them. On June 18, 2010, convicted murderer Ronnie Lee Gardner was executed by firing squad in Utah. This method of carrying out the death penalty has sparked widespread public criticism. Gardner became the 3rd person to be executed by firing squad in the U.S. since 1976 and remains the last one to date. He chose firing squad as his method of execution before this practice was banned in Utah in 2004. In 2010, execution by firing squad was only legal in the state of Oklahoma. What about 2024? In the American state of Oklahoma, the last scheduled execution for 2024 took place on December 19th. The man who was executed was a 45-year-old convicted of murdering a 10-year-old girl. The man was executed on his own birthday by lethal injection. His earlier petition for clemency was denied by the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board. Well, that's a birthday gift for you, as terrible as it sounds. The US is one of the few countries where the death penalty is still in use. It's imposed for particularly serious crimes. Both men and women can be sentenced to the death penalty. Recently, many states are rethinking their stance on the death penalty for crimes that don't involve taking a life. And now, friends, I want to make you a very interesting offer. You have a unique opportunity to become part of our team. If you have video editing skills, can voice over videos in Russian, English, or other languages, or write interesting scripts, we'd love to work with you. Just message our Telegram bot. We would be happy to work with you. Message our Telegram bot. The link is in the description. That's all for today. See you soon on the channel.